Let's dive into a topic that's been on the minds of many fans: the Atlanta Falcons and the potential trade of their 15th draft pick. It seems unlikely that the Falcons will move up in the draft, but trading back could be a real possibility. This conversation has been brewing for a while, especially considering the limited draft capital Atlanta has. Recently, I came across an article from ESPN where analyst Jordan Reed mentioned the Falcons as a prime candidate to trade back from that 15th spot. Terry Fontenot, the Falcons' general manager, has only traded back once in his 4 years, but with just 5 picks in a deep class of edge rushers, Atlanta might feel comfortable moving back a few spots if they see several players with similar grades on their board. This could create an ideal situation for them. I suspect any trade would likely happen right as the clock ticks down to their pick, similar to how the Texans traded their first-round pick to the Minnesota Vikings last year. However, I believe the Falcons would prefer to wait and see how the first 14 picks unfold before making a decision. If a decent offer comes in, they might consider moving back to gain some extra valuable picks. In a recent mock draft I participated in, we saw how the board looked when the Falcons were on the clock at 15. Many top prospects like Mike Green, Jalen Carter, and Will Johnson were already off the board. At that point, the Falcons faced a tough choice: reach for a defensive end or go with the best player available. If you caught the live show, you know I made a bold choice, but ideally, the Falcons could trade back a few spots and still land a player they like while also picking up an extra draft pick. In a perfect scenario, the Falcons could move from 15th to the early 20s and still target someone like Mikel Williams. If their top 3 choices are gone, they could still walk away with a solid player and an additional pick. The risk, of course, is that if Williams or their preferred choice is taken before they're on the clock again, they have to weigh whether that extra pick was worth it. If they don't receive any offers for the 15th pick, they'll have to settle for whoever is left on their board. Now let's talk a bit more about Mikel Williams. He's a player worth keeping an eye on. At 6 feet 5 inches and 260 pounds, he has an impressive build and decent speed, clocking in at a 4.77-second 40-yard dash. While that's not blazing fast, he's certainly not slow. Plus, he's only 20 years old, meaning he hasn't even reached his full potential yet. As he matures, he'll likely gain more muscle and improve his speed and strength. By the time he's ready for his second contract, he'll still be younger than some players in this draft class. The only concern is that his junior year was expected to be a breakout season, but it didn't quite pan out in terms of production. To be fair, he played through a high ankle sprain for much of the season, which likely impacted his performance. Overall, Mikel Williams could be a great addition for the Falcons if they decide to trade back and still land a player they believe in. Let's take a closer look at Mikel Williams and why his production might not have met expectations. It's important to consider that he faced some tough competition, especially in crucial games against Texas. In both their regular season matchup and the SEC championship, Williams was a standout, consistently pressuring the quarterback. If you want a player who shines when the stakes are high, Williams has proven he can rise to the occasion rather than just racking up stats against lesser opponents. When evaluating players, I'd much prefer 2 impactful sacks against a strong team like Texas over 6 sacks against weaker teams. This perspective is crucial when assessing Williams. While 5 sacks in a season isn't ideal, we have to weigh the context, like his high ankle sprain and how he performed against top-tier competition. That context adds more value than simply looking at his overall stats from the entire season. Now let's explore what a potential trade back could look like. I have a team in mind that might be interested in moving up: the Houston Texans at pick 25. There are a couple of reasons for this choice. First, their general manager, Nick Caserio, has shown a willingness to make aggressive moves, including trading back last year to gain more draft capital. After back-to-back playoff appearances, the Texans might feel it's time to be more proactive. They recently traded away their starting left tackle, so moving up to 15 could help them secure the top tackle available. Alternatively, if they're looking to support quarterback C.J. Stroud with a wide receiver, they might want to jump ahead if players like Ted McMillan or Matthew Golden start to slip. In this hypothetical trade, the Falcons would receive one of Houston's 2 third-round picks, giving Atlanta a chance to add more talent in the later rounds. If they do trade back and Mikel Williams isn't available, there are a few other prospects in that mid-20s range worth considering. One player to keep an eye on is a defensive end from Boston College who stands at 6 feet 2 inches and weighs 248 pounds. He was a 3-year starter for the Eagles and wasn't heavily recruited coming out of New Jersey, but he consistently generated pressure and produced impressive stats. This player, Donovan Asamoah, played as a stand-up outside linebacker, which means he might not have the traditional size for a defensive end in a three-point stance. However, if the Falcons decide to experiment with a 3-4 defensive front, he could fit in well. While I'm not saying he'll have the same production or career trajectory as Arnold Ebiketie, there are certainly some similarities in their profiles and what they accomplished in college. Mikel Williams had an impressive season with 16.5 sacks, just half a sack shy of the national leader, Mike Green. He also racked up a significant number of tackles for loss. However, there are some concerns about him being primarily a pass rush specialist. While having a player who can excel in obvious passing situations, like on 3rd and long, is valuable, it's not always ideal to spend a first-round pick on someone who may not contribute significantly on early downs. If a player is expected to be a first-rounder, they should ideally be versatile enough to play a lot. If Williams is viewed mainly as a situational pass rusher, he might be better suited for a second-round selection. Another prospect to consider is James Pierce from Tennessee, who presents a different profile compared to Williams. Standing at 6 feet 5 inches and weighing 245 pounds, Pierce ran an impressive 4.47-second 40-yard dash, making him one of the fastest players in this draft class. His speed is remarkable, and he can quickly disrupt plays in the backfield. However, it's important to note that speed alone doesn't always translate well to the NFL. College offensive tackles often struggle with speed, but in the pros, they are much more agile. If a player relies solely on speed to get to the quarterback, they might find it challenging against more athletic tackles. On the flip side, power can be a significant asset for edge rushers. The downside of power players is that they may lack the quickness needed to get off the line effectively. This is what makes elite prospects like Myles Garrett and Von Miller so special. They combine both speed and strength. Unfortunately, those types of players aren't common in every draft class. If the Falcons see potential in Pierce, they might believe that with some time in the weight room, he could develop a more powerful bull rush. However, there are a few concerns with Pierce. First, he has a slender frame, which can be a disadvantage. Second, there have been some character concerns regarding his presence in the locker room. Atlanta has done their due diligence by bringing him in for visits and meetings, so they should have a good understanding of his character. Lastly, there was a slight dip in his production, going from 10 sacks in 2023 to 7.5 in 2024. As someone who followed Tennessee closely, I can tell you that players often pad their stats against weaker opponents early in the season. Pierce played limited snaps, averaging around 35 per game, so more opportunities could lead to better production. Now, circling back to the trade proposal, would you consider moving back from 15 to 25? If your top choice isn't available at 15 and you could still land someone like Mikel Williams or James Pierce at 25 while also gaining an extra third-round pick, would you do it? For me, it depends on who you're targeting at 15. If it's someone like James Pierce, I think the difference between him and Williams is minimal, so I'd be open to moving back and adding that extra pick. As we wrap up, I want to give a shout out to a viewer from our recent live show. Thank you all for tuning in. A special shout out goes to WCG, 2 claps for you. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll be back with more content throughout the weekend.